the life of a bail bondsman.
Out free on multiple felony bonds or PR bonds.
A nationwide movement for police and criminal justice reform.
For this bond issue, repeat violent offenders.
Bail talk, we talk bail. Bail talk, we talk bail. Bail talk, we talk bail. Bail City, Red Room, bail talk, we talk bail.
Welcome to Bail Talk. I'm your host, Carter Spencieri, bail agent at Bail City Bail Bonds. My direct line is 970-691-9544. And I'm with my co-hosts. I'll let them introduce themselves.
Alex Spencieri, bail bondsman at Bail City Bail Bonds.
Nicholas Sanchez, future recovery agent at Bail Bonds and Bail City Bail Bonds.
And Mark Spencieri from Express Bail Bonds.
Thank you for tuning into our show today. We have a very special guest, Glen Younger. He has a special story that I've wanted to share with everybody for a long time. I think it's a really cool story and it'd make a great show for the bail bonds industry. Without further ado, welcome Glen Younger, the man that never had to pay an insurance company.
Yep, this is Glen Younger, Colorado Bonding in Grand Junction, Colorado. I've been a licensed bail bondsman since August of 1972. My license is a cash bondsman's license now. So when I started being a bail bondsman, my father had been one since 1965. The new bail law was written in 1964. The law specifically indicated that no company, no corporation, no partnership could be a bail bondsman, only an individual. So at that time, only individual people could be bail bondsmen. You put up $5,000 in cash with the Colorado Division of Insurance, and they gave you a license. So that's what I worked off of the first 3 years that I was in the business.
Was there any limitations on that 5,000? Glenn, was there any limitations
5,000.
on that? 5,000 can get you what? Unlimited?
You post any kind of a bond.
Wow.
You were licensed with the state.
Okay.
But of course, back then, bonds weren't very high. About 3 years into my career, the state of Colorado changed the law and made bondsmen put up $10,000. And at that particular time, there was a lady by the name of Smith that came into Colorado from North Carolina. And she was very astute and quite political. And she worked the bail bonds laws so that a company could be a bail bondsman, could write bail. And so that's the first start of insurance-type bonding. And from there, the law progressed. And I think I've been in the business like 12 years. And they made us go from 10,000 to 50,000 if we wanted to stay and be a cash bondsman. This was all because of Smith, Mrs. Smith, and Pioneer General. So the bail bond industry began to change quite a bit because $50,000 was quite a bit of money, and nobody could get that kind of money up. And so she was putting agents on that she could underwrite, and the bail bond business changed significantly then.
Now, would you prefer having that old style of license where an individual would just be a bail bondsman rather than an insurance company hiring producers left and right? What are the pros and cons of that?
The cons are the pros are that bail bond is not real insurance, and here's the reason why. When somebody dies and you have a life insurance policy, who pays? The insurance company. If you have a health insurance policy and the guy gets sick and goes to the hospital, who pays? The insurance company. If you have a house that burns down, and who pays? The insurance company. The agent doesn't. The agent only writes the policy. But in the bail bond business, the insurance companies make the individual responsible if a defendant fails to appear. So it's not actually true insurance because of that circumstance. The bondsman pays in the end no matter what. You tell me of a bondsman that licensed with the insurance company that didn't have to pay a bond off if the defendant failed to appear.
No such thing.
The only time that happens is if a bonding agent goes broke.
Well, on a quick note, I just wanted to let everyone know that's watching, we have 3 self-insured agents on here. You, Alec, and my uncle. Real quick, Mark, can you explain your license, and then I'll let Glenn explain how his works, the difference.
Well, my license is professional cash agent, which was introduced after Gussie Smith, Pioneer General, got rid of the licensing that Glen has. They wanted to have their share of the pie, so they made it where you couldn't be that anymore, and Glen and some others were grandfathered in. And so it was gone for several years. Some of us bondsmen that had been around several years got together and got a lobbyist to reopen it where we could put up $50,000, but we had a limit of 2 times our deposit per bond, whereas Glen has no limit on a bond amount he can write. So we can only post bonds up to a certain amount based on our deposit, and we had to have, kind of a clean record and no problems to get this license. But we opened the door back up to be, little brothers of what Glen has. It's a good thing, not quite as good as what Glen has, though, that's for sure.
And Glen, your license?
That's great that they got that done. Those people should be commended for putting out the effort and the time and money to get this circumstances away from the insurance company totally and get some opportunity for somebody that wants to have a business in the bail bond business to not be with an insurance company.
Now, there's a 4-year rule on the license, professional cash agent license, where you have to be a bail bondsman for 4 years prior to submitting your application and applying for the license.
Which means you guys had to pay an insurance company
for 4 years
before you could apply and get granted that license.
What's your take on that? Do you think that's wise, Glenn, or what's your take on the 4-year mark?
That's a way for people to get started in the bail bond business. I don't. What would you say? There needs to be a way for somebody to be a bail bondsman, and if you can't put up $50,000, which is a lot of money, then you don't. There's that through an insurance company is the way you can get started. So if you wanted to be a bail bonds person, you could go to the state of Colorado and find out which insurance companies are eligible and licensed to post bonds through agents in Colorado and get started. And then you could work for 4 years and learn the business and then put up your own money and have the business more profitable for you.
And I also think
I don't deny insurance companies that opportunity, but it really irritates me that insurance companies would like to eliminate the competition by making it so difficult for an individual to be a bail bondsman.
This is Mark talking now. I personally think Glen's very fortunate to have gotten in the business the way he did, and he had a family, his father, that was in it before him. But I've been an insurance agent who actually worked for Mrs. Smith in Pioneer General, and what I did learn was I had some restraint and some restrictions, and I couldn't just go post any bond, and I got trained. And I had people miscord on me, and I learned what a bad bond was and what a sign of a bad bond and things that people did and catching them at lies. So I support 4 years so that someone gets their feet wet in the business and they don't just go write large bonds and, forfeit and not stand up for their responsibilities to the court. Not everybody's been in it as long as Glen and had a father that knew the business, and our times are changing. The defendants are harder. They have different problems. than back when Glenn started and when I started in 1988. I mean, it's a different world we're in now. So I think it's a good idea, for someone to get 4 years under their belt, to have not, done stupid things that, maybe the state's a little restrictive on issuing the licenses, but I think there's some good, there's some good things to it, where people are a little bit trained already.
Well, I feel like the 4 years also eliminates or has some protection for the court system. If someone had $50,000 and they signed up and they had 10 people in jail on $100,000 bonds, $50,000 for $1 million in bail is a no-brainer, right? Let those guys forfeit. So, not anyone can get that cash license right away, where there's that level of protection for the courts, where it's like, hey, you have to be doing this before you do that, because with an insurance company, you're whole dollar for dollar. And an insurance company would say, hey, look, it's your first day and you're trying to write $100,000 bonds. What the heck's going on here, right? So,
were there a lot of bondsmen in that Grand Junction, Western Slope area when you got into the business, Glenn?
At one time, I was the only bail bondsman on the Western Slope. So I did bonds in Cortez, Durango, Steamboat, Meeker, Grand County, over at
Glenwood Springs, Garfield
Alden.
County.
All right, Glenn.
Garfield County, Pitkin County.
So
I was on the road a lot.
Did you ride
when there got to be more bail bondsmen, I was glad there was, because I didn't have to make all those trips. My clients could start getting out of jail without me having to run all over the state of Colorado on the Western Slope and expose myself to the highways and the bad roads.
Especially out there.
Well, and you've been doing it so long, I bet your first bond was on a horseback, huh? Horse and buggy like the Wells Fargo man?
Not quite, but it was shortly after they quit riding horses to the bond, to the court, I guess.
So, and a long time ago, anything almost that people got in trouble for had a commercial bond they had to post. And what time period do you say that Junction, like that kind of snapped out there and things kind of changed when they started releasing people on, a PR bond or a pinky promise?
Well, it actually started over on the Eastern Slope. I think it was Larimer County or possibly Boulder that started having the elimination of the bail bond schedule. What the counties were doing back when I first started is they had a schedule on a piece of paper that showed the charge and the bond amount. And then the counties made up their own mind whether they would stack charges and make you post a bond for all the charges, or they would make you post a bond for the most serious charge that they charged you with. So those counties were kind of different in that respect. Some of them charge you stacks of bonds so that the amount was more, and some of them didn't. But once they got this pretrial services where they were releasing people and eliminating this bail bond schedule, then it almost like it was the greed of pretrial services that was eliminating our business. I don't know why they got so liberal with criminals. But somewhere along the line, people began to decide that a bail bondsman was or shouldn't be in the criminal judicial system somehow. And yet they couldn't quite get rid of us because they knew we were important enough to get the defendant to get to court each time. So they never have been able to get a totally eliminate us because of that circumstance. People do not go to court when you turn them loose with them for themselves all the time. So, but it's getting to be more and more liberal as we go through the years.
Mesa County was one of the big pretrial counties, wasn't it, Glenn?
It was. It started in Larimer County, and then it came over here, and
which I think is
kind
odd.
of took off.
Well, I think it's odd because that's kind of a conservative area, kind of like the Wild West. When you go out there, you got your mesas and, no pun intended, Mesa County, but it's like you're in the Wild West, and you would think that they would be against something like this, where I would imagine crime has spiked out there with all of this personal recognizance going on. What's your take on that? Have you seen it spike up?
Yeah, well, here's the reality of it. In Mesa County, we have set up by the county that if you are supervising a certain amount of people, then you are able to charge more. They pay you more. So we had a guy that looked at the circumstances with pretrial services, and he figured out how he could get more people working in pretrial services so that as a supervisor, he could get paid more. And he went about his business of getting pretrial services and day reporting and weekend stuff that was under his control. And before it was over with, he was doing quite well with his salary. Quite well. So whenever you set
it's like
that
an
kind of
artificial bail bondsman, kind of, right? To a degree. Hey, there's no responsibility, but hey, we're gonna make money on, people being in bonding out on a PR bond.
Well, here's what he did. He eliminated totally the bail bond schedule. So there wasn't any bail bond. Well, that wasn't enough for him. Then he decided that any misdemeanor would be turned loose on a PR bond. Then he decided, let's get in here and let's eliminate any possibility for a bondsman totally. So not only did they eliminate the bail bond schedule, they made it so that anybody in Mesa County that was arrested had to see a judge first before they could have a bond. So right now, the way it stands in Mesa County, there's no bond schedule. There's no bond available to a defendant without seeing a judge.
And you
the
see a lot
judge gets the first whack at him, and that's why there's all these PR bonds.
What were bonds like when you first started? I mean, DUIs and assault to you. I mean, what kind of bonds were judges
bonds
setting?
For a DUI when I first got in the business, $300.
The king of the $300 bond.
A lot of, $300 bond. Then it went to $500, and now I think it's at $1,000 if you can get the judge to set it on a misdemeanor.
What about
usually they have to have
violent crimes? What about violent crimes? And I mean, what was a large bond when you got into the business?
Oh man, a large bond was $50,000. That was a large bond.
You were knocking those out pretty regularly over in Junction, in
No,
Western Slope?
Not at all. No.
Okay. So, what was the height during your career over in Mesa County when you felt like, okay, they were accounting for public safety with someone having to post a monetary bond, bonds were really good. When was the height of your career during those times?
Oh, I suppose in the 80s. Sometime in the 80s that it was real good. I was posting, say, $600, $700, $800 bonds a year, between $600 and $800 a year, and then it just really dropped off when pretrial services got their control, and the attitude of the court changed considerably. The judges changed considerably, and we had a judge here by the name of Botker that solicited a local attorney to write why there shouldn't be surety bonds, and that crippled the business. And of course, other counties were kind of watching because Mesa County was the larger county over here, and it had some effect on them. I know that Garfield County tried to start pretrial services, and one of the bondsmen that I helped get in the business as an independent, he went and had enough influence and effort that he eliminated Garfield County from actually doing it for a while. They eventually did it, but he was successful in delaying it.
Bail City Bail Bonds, Colorado's premier bail bonds agency. Give us a call today, 970-378-7878.
Now, during the 80s when you were writing damn near 1,000 bonds, was there a lot of forfeitures or during that time, or was it, hey, look, we had to post a monetary bond, that things weren't as bad as they are now out there?
They are definitely not as bad as they are now because people had more respect for themselves and the court process. Nobody has any respect. A lot of people don't have any respect for themselves, and they won't go to court, especially girls, women, young women.
Is it because they
They're
can't
horrible.
man up and go to court? Is that why?
I don't know.
Did you do your own recoveries, Glenn? Did you do a lot of your own?
Yeah, I did my own. So,
Well, you've probably seen it all.
I'd
You got
take
a
somebody
story
with
for
me.
us? You got a story for us?
Well,
Your funniest
you
one?
know, I was very
Your favorite.
fortunate. I had a guy work for me that had worked for the Monticello County Sheriff's Office in Cortez, and he'd worked for them for 13 years. And he was a gentleman that had come to my bull riding school when he was young, and he knew me, and he worked for me, and we were a good team to get people back into court. He had the knowledge and the experience, and I had the try and the go after, and we were a good team. I still wish he was around. He was a good one.
See, back then
you
you
get somebody
couldn't.
like that works for you. You want to keep them around if you can.
There wasn't computer software for skip tracing and phone pinging like there used to be, 4 or 5 years ago. It was just looking at the app and figuring it out, huh?
Putting the puzzle pieces together.
I am very, very poor with computers. My skills are nil. And I admire the younger generation for their ability to use the computer. But I have not got the ability, experience, and background to do it. And I think I've got a mindset that is not conducive to computers. It's almost like when I sit down to a computer that there's a sign that says you're an idiot. So I don't get very far with computers. I have a heck of a time. And I think Mark is way, he was at a generation that was kind of coming along. Mark, did you have computer classes in your high school, college curriculum?
I think they were starting, because I graduated high school in 1985, and that was not even a video game. I mean, that was the early computers were that MS-DOS, and we would do reports to the insurance company on that DOS prompt and C / and all that kind of stuff. And now I'm definitely, database, skip tracing and, all that kind of stuff. I've definitely kept up on that technology, I think, in my opinion, although we can always learn more.
I wish I had those types of skills and what have you with those programs and whatever, but I do not.
So, Glenn, this is Mark again. I just put a thing on my Facebook the other day. You know, Colorado is #1 in auto thefts and #1 in bank robberies now. Can you believe what our state, which used to be a nice one horse town, you know, country folks, is now at that level of crime?
Mark, that is indicative of liberal. Liberal in the court system, liberal in people's thinking, liberal in the political process that's successful. We have had a tremendous amount of liberalism be successful in Colorado. It is not good. It is not good.
I got some
Especially
stats
when it
here.
comes to judicial.
I got some stats here on how bad Mesa County's gotten since they've dropped the ball. The judges don't want to make these people accountable. Nick's looking them up. Let me know when you have those, Nick. What's your favorite story of you in the bail bonds business? Do you have a favorite story you could tell?
Oh, I don't necessarily have a favorite story, but you know, I got a guy out of one time, and he had raped a girl here in Mesa County up on the National Monument here, and I had him on a $5,000 bond, and he skipped and went into Mexico. And I had a cousin who I was telling this story to, and he said, you know, I got a guy that used to work for me and I told him that the guy was in San Luis Potosi, somewhere down around close to Mexico City. I didn't know where it was. Anyway, he said, I had a guy work for me that used to live in San Luis Potosi, and he gave me his name here in Grand Junction. Well, he was working for a gravel company, and I went and saw him, and I told him that what my problem was, and he says, I don't think I can help you, you know. And I said, well, maybe if you can. Well, he called me back, and he says, I think I can help you. And so he set it up, and I went to the border in Brownsville. I went across the border, and they brought the guy to me, and they wanted me to stay on that side of the border and pay him. And I just started walking across the bridge because I didn't know what else to do. I didn't want to stay in Mexico, and I didn't want to give him my money in Mexico. So when I got across the bridge, they brought him in a car. There was a whole bunch of cars there, but they got in line, and I walked slowly, and they came across the bridge. We got across the bridge, and I got the guy. I paid him. And when we were in the, I don't know what you call it there, where they sign in and sign out of the United States, the guy told me, he said, if this guy doesn't want to come into the United States, he doesn't have to. Well, when I walked him up there to that bench, he said he didn't want to come into the United States. And so they said, he's not coming in. I said, wait. I said, just a minute. So I took him back into the back there and used the phone. We didn't have cell phones back then. And called a sheriff's deputy here in Mesa County that was Spanish. And I told Bob Silva, I said, you tell this guy that he's coming to the United States or he'll never get to see his family again. And in the meantime, when we were all getting ready for these people to get there with him in the car, I found a guy that on the street that said he could bring him across the river for $600. Well, I was hoping I didn't have to do that. But anyway, when we got back there in the back and was making these phone calls, the guy that was the agent for the United States looked at me and he says, do you want me to help you? And I said, yeah, I want you to help me. And I don't know what he said in Spanish to this guy, but as soon as he got done saying it, this guy was shaking his head, bueno. And I got him into the United States. Well, it had taken so much time to get all of this accomplished that when I got to the airport, I watched this plane fly out of Brownsville, and I thought, that's the last plane to Houston, I'll bet you. So when we got in the terminal, that was the last plane to Houston. And couldn't get out on another plane to go to Houston and get back to Colorado until the next morning. So I took this guy in my rental car, and decided that we would sleep in the rental car in the parking lot. Well, here comes security, and they said, you cannot stay here. You cannot stay in this parking lot overnight. So I went to a hardware store, and I bought me a piece of rope. And I tied my Mexican to the bed with his handcuffs. And I told him that I was a light sleeper. I told him a couple other things, too, because he could understand English enough to.
Did you set
up?
up?
I got up the next morning really early, untied him around the bed, and went to the airport, stuffed my rope in the duffel bag, and we got on a plane and came to Colorado.
You have to do a bail bonds alarm clock. And what a bail bonds alarm clock is you have to stack stuff by the door. So if they were to open the door, it would fall and wake you up. That's a bail bonds alarm clock.
That's one of the things I didn't think about. But anyway, I got him back here.
Hey, Glenn, this is Nick. So, with the crime rate nowadays versus the crime rate in your days, like, were you surprised about that at all, or you're really not all that surprised?
Well, I'm not really surprised when you look at the progress of the deterioration of our society. When
Right.
Colorado moves to granting same-sex marriages, they approved marijuana. They would like to approve other drugs for personal use. And when you do that, it allows for more crime. People make more stupid decisions when they're under the influence of substances, whether it be alcohol or drugs or serious type drugs. They're just dumber. They don't do smart things. Their judgment is impaired. And so there is more crime. There is more lack of respect for each other and the system. It just will happen.
Hey, Glenn, you and my uncle here used to be on the committee for the bail bondsman that would help the Division of Insurance solve bail bonds problems or issues with certain bondsmen. I just wanted to ask you guys, what was that like when you guys were both on that committee?
We didn't address a lot of individual type offenses like we thought we were going to. I would go over there to Denver to those meetings, and I was not really impressed with what we had to look at that was given to us by the Division of Insurance. And I don't know, a lot of those cases they may not have been able to tell us about or give us a lot of detail about because they were criminal type cases against bondsmen. And I don't know, but I was very disappointed in what we got to discuss in reference to what the committee was actually supposedly designed to do. So there wasn't a lot of success with that committee. I didn't feel like at all.
So that was the Bail Bond Advisory Committee that by statute, Colorado law, they had to form. And Glenn, you were driving 3.5, 4 hours to get there. Is that correct?
It was 3.5 hours there, and then the meeting, and then 3.5 hours back.
And with snow,
it was a 7-hour, 8-hour deal. And you get to put the roads in there and what have you.
And that committee was one cash agent, the old cash agent, you guys, one professional cash agent, me. And I think, did you serve the whole term? I mean, no one else really wanted to participate and give their time to help the system. So I think you were there the whole duration as well,
I
weren't you?
think so, Mark. I think I was.
And I think there was,
there.
maybe 2 insurance company agents, 1 insurance company management, or whatever you would want to call a representation from the insurance company,
Supervisor.
and 1 law enforcement agent, right? And we would meet, I think it was monthly at first, and I think the committee we're like, well, we're not doing much, and I think we went down to every 3 months. And then we kind of fought, us people given our time, you, me, and everybody, because we're like, we're supposed to review complaints and give our opinion about the hand that's, given to the bondsman, kind of to, review the complaints and the criminal actions that could be accused of an agent. And finally, we did get some cases. Remember, we had to sign the confidentiality and promise not to leak. And some of us would have friends, and that I can see the problem. Where if I was friends with someone, I could have an interest in my friend not getting hammered, although the rest of the committee could have their 2 cents, and the state and the attorney general would prosecute criminal offenses. But obviously they had to be careful not to leak stuff. But it was kind of a fight, and we did start reviewing some complaints. Do you remember the one where a lady, I believe she was Spanish speaking, probably from Mexico, gave $10,000 to someone at a McDonald's and got a receipt on a napkin? And do you remember that one?
Well, I really don't, Mark. I'm sorry, but that's a good story.
And so I told Beth Ham, I'm like, that's tragic, because it may have happened. If you have your husband or a loved one in jail and you think someone's going to get him out on a $100,000 bond, you may do that. But my opinion, what I told the state was, we can't protect everybody from their own mistakes. I don't even think they had a phone number of the supposed person or a name or a bonding company. And in my opinion, it's tragic if someone stole $10,000. But if you give $10,000 to someone at a McDonald's and they write something on a napkin, you kind of have put yourself in that position as well. So there was no bondsman for us to say, well, let's go get that bondsman, he's a bad guy, because there was not even a first name to even try to investigate. And we did review some other complaints. I can't remember, all the specifics.
Well, I can't either.
Collateral.
I do have a bunch of files from those hearings, but
not really.
I think it lasted for what? Maybe a year and a half, 2 years?
I think it was longer than that, to be honest with you. I could pull it up.
It probably was.
It just, when you go from once a month to every 3 months, it just kind of spreads. It's only 4 meetings a year, and, fight in the division about what can we hear, and, let's pass out some files and talk about it. But when the laws got rewritten here for the insurance agency stuff, there was no provision in there that there be a bail bond advisory committee by statute. It didn't have to exist, and therefore.
And I think the main influence to the changing of the laws to eliminate that advisory council committee was the insurance division itself. Because if I remember, Beth Ham and the people that were involved were doing quite a bit of footwork to get ready for the committee to meet, and they felt like we did, that there wasn't a lot of benefits to it, so it was eliminated.
Yeah, probably could have done more.
All right, Glenn, I got a 2-part question for you, just to highlight the specialty of your license. So I want to know, what's the largest bond you've ever done without having a commercial insurance company underwrite it? And just a ballpark number of how much liability you've written during your career as a bail bondsman.
I have no idea how much liability I've written, so I'll start with the last
Ballpark.
part of that.
What about ballpark? If you had to guess.
Ballpark?
Ballpark.
Oh.
You were doing 1,000 bonds in the 80s. Ballpark. How much liability?
I would suppose somewhere in the neighborhood of $250 million.
Everyone get your
That's what I
calculators
would
out,
say.
put your rate in. And, you pay 1% of premium charged. So on $1,000 bond, you charge $150. You pay
Yes.
when you do your annual report,
15%.
you pay $1.50, where other insurance producers would pay in the neighborhood of $10 to $15 on $1,000 bond.
Well, I don't know what they pay the insurance companies. I don't know.
But that's just the
Each one of
standard
them has-
rate. Yeah, standard
What's
is
that?
1% to 1.5% is a pretty standard rate. But what's the largest bond that you've underwritten yourself?
500,000.
What's the story behind that? You jump up for
We
joy
had a
when
guy
they
over
called?
here we had a guy over here that killed his wife and buried her in the landfill, and they found her and charged him, and his mother and father were attorneys for the government down in Georgia. And I went down there and secured the bond with the house on the corner down there. At that time, the father to the defendant was deceased, and he hadn't been deceased too long. And the mother was still available. Her other son worked for Department of Defense or one other department, and then he had but anyway, I got the bond secured with real estate and annuities that were held by an insurance company, and I got assignments to them and came back to Colorado and posted the bond. He was later found guilty, and he's currently serving time in Colorado State Penitentiary.
When was that? What year was that?
I didn't hear you.
What year was that, Glenn, when all this occurred?
Oh, my goodness gracious. I don't know. It was probably 12 years ago, maybe 15 years ago.
Get yourself some new bulls with the
Was
money?
I what?
Did you get yourself some new bulls with the money?
No, I went about my business. I had a farm and cattle and what have you, and I spent it.
So when you took a house on collateral, say in general, were these housing prices adequate, or were they more of on the lower spectrum?
Well, the home was free and clear, so and I got an attorney involved in Georgia, made sure I had the right mortgage documents filed, and then in reference to the annuities and what have you, and those assignments, those were given to me by the insurance companies that were holding the annuities, and so I knew those paperwork would be legitimate and would be honored in court.
Okay,
let's go around. Let's give him all one more question.
All right,
Alec, I'll let you start.
All right, here's my last question for you on that $500,000 bond, 10 or 15.
What was the question?
On that $500,000 bond, 10% or 15%?
10%.
Good for you.
10%. Yep.
During future recovery in your days, was it much easier, or was it much more of the state rules or guidelines?
Were there more guidelines, I guess, or less?
I think since I had been here for so long and had a good reputation, that I was more people were more respectful of myself and my business than what they are now. The turnover in the sheriff's office and the judicial system is now to the point that a lot of people that haven't even heard of me, and I've been here for 49, 50 years. And they won't even give me what the charges are to a bond in Craig now, in Moffat County. I can call and get the name of the defendant, or if I give him the name and the date of birth, they'll give me his charges only. Or no, let's see they'll give me the bond amount only. They will not give me the charges.
That's a little irritating, that Moffett County. I called down there.
Yeah.
They don't want to give a case number, charges.
No, they want to give nothing.
It's public information.
So-
That's the sad part.
They gave it to me. I have a 20,000. I'm working down there. I've done a few there though.
Okay, so Glenn, this is Mark. What's the biggest forfeiture you've ever paid?
Oh gosh, probably 10.
10,000's the biggest you've ever paid, and did you
Yeah,
recover?
and I have to go back in my records because I don't even remember that. Really, I'm just saying that because I didn't have anything bigger than that.
Well, that's
I've
good.
had some forfeitures. I've had forfeitures, but I've never paid them. I've always found the guy. You know what I mean?
Great. That's great.
Having
Yeah.
accountability for them.
Right.
Well, Glenn, I really appreciate you coming on this show. It means a lot. I'm glad that we could, get your story out here, and I've always wanted to hear it again. So we're really glad you came on our show, and Alec will be in touch with you. I'm sure he's always working some bonds. So
Yes, and if you get over here and you can, just stop long enough, you got some time, call me. I'd love to see you. Mark, I'd just love to see you come over here and visit with me sometime. So if you ever get over here, stop and see me.
He
All
chickened out on the last Western Slope we did last summer, but maybe this summer we'll have to get out there and come see you, Glenn.
We'll get it done. My son's 4.5 years old now, and he's used to riding in the car, and he just loves doing everything: cowboy, guns, bail bonds. So we'll come out and see you. It's a lot funner when they're active and they're not, a baby, an infant crying.
Yep.
So, all right.
Well, I appreciate it.
Nice
Ben.
talking
Thank
to you,
you
Glenn. Thank you.
You betcha. Thank you, guys.
Okay, you take care.
Talk to you later.
All right.
Bye.
Said I'm about to clean it up, I'm about to roll it up, I'm about to pull it up, drip it drop like water.